So, everybody, good evening, good evening, good evening. It is January 18th, 2019, the first meeting of the year of the virtual chapter. That just happens to be, well, what can I say other than it's a one for the money because it happens to be Elvis Presley's birthday today. In honor of Elvis Presley. It's exactly right. I haven't really seen Elvis around much lately, though. I've been looking for him, and every once in a while, I sort of think that I hear him in the background or get some sense that that he must be present somewhere. Have you had any different experience with it, Karen?
I believe that I am pretty in touch with Elvis. I'm an Elvis fan from way back. I was 4 days old when his first song hit the radio. So I've been an Elvis fan my entire life, literally. And
except for those first 4 days, right?
Well, except for those first 4 days. But I might have come into this plane with some knowledge about him anyway. And I don't hear Elvis, but I see Elvis when Adam Lambert takes the stage, because I think he is maybe Elvis reincarnated. I really honestly do believe that he is Elvis was born with a twin, and his twin was born dead. And I believe that Adam is reincarnated Jesse Garon Presley, because they couldn't both be famous at the same time.
Well, now tell me then, as a hypnotist, would you prefer to do a past life regression on Adam Lambert so that you could speak with Elvis Presley? Or would you prefer to do a future life progression with Elvis Presley so that you could see Adam Lambert?
Wow, both. Me, I can't choose. I want both.
All right, great. Well, listen, it is a lot of stuff going on here at the beginning of the year. January, of course, right now. There's a couple of things happening. On the 14th of January, 14th, 21st, and 28th, if any of you have an interest in the virtual hypnotist online class, it will be on Zoom right here. All you've got to do is sign up for it. You can contact me about that. It's only a $65 course, 3 weeks long. Everything you need to know about how to do this online and handling the green screen and all of that other stuff. So if anyone's interested, there's about 2 spaces left in class, 2 or 3, I think. So there's that to announce. And later on in January, Karen, you've got something coming up.
Coming up on January 12th, it's the Financial Freedom Virtual Hypno Summit. And that's this Saturday. So you can still get in on that if you're interested in it. It's only $39 for the full day. And it's all about doing the business of hypnosis. Every speaker will be talking about the hypnosis business. I'll be talking about, interesting for me, since I wrote the book Magic Words and Language Patterns, I'll be talking about nonverbal messages that you deliver in your business and how important those are. So minding your business before and around the words. It's a great thing if you're available on Saturday. And you also get the recording so you can listen to it in your own time. But for $39, how do you miss it?
Okay. But now, just so long as that $39 doesn't strap you, because on February 2nd and 3rd, you can spend $99, or actually, I think it's $129 now because you've missed the early rate. The Galaxy of the Stars, IACT IMDHA Galaxy of the Stars. It used to be a regular event that they held in Detroit. We are doing it online for the first time. And this time around, we're doing it with the what I called the 4 biggies. I mentioned this to Linda, and she just ran with it. And I'm so glad that they were happy to do this. So it's going to be Shawn Carson, our guest this evening. You'll hear a little more from in just a few minutes. Shawn is going to be talking about quitting smoking cessation stuff. You may know that Shawn and his cohorts, I don't know whose name is on the cover of that book, but I think Jess Marion's is, and Sarah, is that right?
Yeah, Jess and Sarah.
And it's called Quit, and it's all about quitting smoking. So award-winning author there. Then we have Kelly Wood on weight loss. Kelly Wood, also the author of a book on weight loss. Lois Prinz is going to be talking about pain management, and she's also done quite a bit of work in that area and has herself written a book. And then finally, last but certainly not least, I will be talking to you about how to handle stress and anxiety. Because I seem to have written the book on those things. We hope you'll join us. It's again February 2nd and 3rd, and you just need to go to IACT or IMDHA's website in order to register for that. We're not running it through the chapter. We're running it through the association itself. But IACT.org or IMDHA.com, and you can register for the Galaxy of the Stars, which is February 2nd and 3rd. It's all day long, 2 days. And then on February 8th, 9th, and 10th, Orlando, Florida. It will be so lovely and warm and wonderful here. Core transformation training will be going on just down the street here from the house where I live. So that's going to be marvelous, and I'm looking forward to that. It's an annual event that we do, and I only do it once a year, and it's just about my favorite training to do. And
coming up in March, I want to mention, if you know anyone who's interested in being a hypnotist, being certified, Michael and I start our certification training again in March. He'll have a group in Orlando, and I'll have a group in Chicago. We start with 1 weekend of individual work in each of those respective cities, hands-on in a classroom, and then we combine our 2 groups, and we do 13 weeks of Zoom training. So not only do you learn more about hypnosis, but you learn about doing the work on Zoom, so you can right out of the gate be a Zoom hypnotist as well as an in-person hypnotist. Mm-hmm. And then we end up our training with another live weekend, one in Orlando and one in Chicago. We split the groups again and finish out. It's a great training.
And you can do the whole thing if you're interested in certification. I suspect most of you are already certified. So with the 2 live weekends and the online, or you can just do the online course as well if you're interested in that part of it. And the online part starts on March 17th. But we're still in February, so hold on here. February 14th, of course, being Valentine's Day. February 13th, I'm counting backwards. Very early in the morning on February 13th, Freddie Jacquin will be sitting in front of a computer and microphone in England to talk to us, and we will, of course, still be in February 12th. So the February meeting of the virtual chapter, our guests will be Freddie Jacquin. Some of you were here with us when Anthony Jacquin was our guest, and this is his dad, Freddie. Freddie invented the arrow technique. Some of you might be familiar with that. He's just such a delightful speaker and presenter. I think we're going to have a great time with him. He's also been on Jason Linette's Work Smart podcast, if any of you follow that kind of recently, and folks just love him. So don't forget about that. Then on February 17th, oh my God, are you ready? Because here it is again. The IACT IMDHA Hypno Expo 2019 is coming up in May, and for a number of weeks early before the expo, we interview all the people that are going to be doing pre- and post-conference programs. Those interviews will be done on Sunday evening, and they begin on Sunday evening, February 17th. We talk to 2 speakers each evening, and that first week is really quite a kickoff because it's in the order of the number of days that people have their pre and posts and stuff like that. So it starts out with George Bien and Roy Hunter on the same bill. Oh my gosh, can you contain yourself? So it's going to be great fun, and we hope that you will join us for that and find out about the courses that they're offering at the expo. And then there's something else later in February in Las Vegas. What's that about, Karen?
Later in February, it is the Winter Hypnosis Conference, February 25th, 26th, and 27th in Vegas. And it will be, there's a full day with Richard Nongard and Jason Linette, and then 2 days of about 24 speakers. It's all about clinical hypnosis. So there won't be any show hypnosis or entertainment hypnosis. It's all about clinical hypnosis. That'll be a great little convention there in Vegas. And it'll be warmer than Chicago, so I'm really looking forward to it.
And I'll be there pitching, at least for a 1 hour talk, the values and benefits of working online with clients. So that's going to be my part of it. And what are you talking about, Karen?
I will be doing a deep dive into the outcome specification questionnaire, or ways to move your client through the meta pattern of change from their problem state to their solution state.
All right, a deep dive. I like the reference. That's a great idea. So, okay. Well, then, I think that's about all the announcements. You got anything else, Karen?
I do not.
Okay.
We've got more stuff coming up later in the year, but we might as well wait till later in the year to talk about those.
Why not? Yeah. So So that
I'm
all said,
here
then
I'm sorry.
we have our guest.
Yes.
We have our guest, Shawn Carson. And Shawn Carson, I am so embarrassed that I don't have your biography in front of me for some silly ass reason. It's just my own mistake. But I've known you for quite a while, and ever since I've known you, you've been just as tall as you are today. A figure to be.
If not taller.
Yeah, in fact. And most of the folks, of course, if you've been to any of the conferences or conventions and things like that, you've probably seen Shawn. Great guy, and works with Jess Marion and with his wife, Sarah Carson, in New York City. And author, co-author of thousands and thousands and thousands of books on hypnosis and NLP and
Slight exaggeration.
some of the wonderful things that you can do with that. So anyway, it's lovely to have you here with us, Shawn. And I've got to tell you, when you were in Chicago, Karen and I stumbled into a talk that you were doing because we just come from the bar or something, most
I was
likely.
going to say, it sounds like we were drunk.
Yeah, that's it. And we stumbled in. We got all comfy and cozy, and you started talking about using the tarot as a coaching tool. And I was transfixed, and I remember telling Karen right away. I says, "We gotta do this. We've got to get Shawn here to visit with us at the chapter." So we are so glad that you're here with us, Shawn, and welcome.
It's nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
All right.
If you want my bio, it starts in 1962. I think it was a Tuesday. The weather was a little bit on the cold side. In fact, it was raining. It was in the city of Blackburn in Lancashire. And my mother was lying on a bed, actually in her bedroom in our house, and the midwife was saying, "Push." So I can go further if you want.
That's all right. I did notice, by the way, when I looked at your bio, I saw a small town in Lancashire, and I didn't realize that it was Blackburn. But Blackburn, of course, is famous for having 4,000 holes.
Yes.
Yes.
In Lancashire, the Beatles.
And now we know how many holes it takes to fill the Albert Hall. So when did you come to the States? What brought you here?
I came on business in 1993, and then I went back again, and then I came back in 1996. So I've been here since 1996. You know, apart from vacations and stuff, I've been here in New York, basically in this room, since 1996. They won't let me leave.
Right in this room.
Yeah. So that was like business. It wasn't this business. It was consulting business.
Were you already a hypnotist when you came here, Shawn, or did
No.
you did that after getting here?
I started actually in 2007. I did my NLP practitioner. Totally fell in love with all that woo-woo stuff. And then I did my master practitioner, and then I trained with Melissa Tiers, and I did clean language, and I trained with John Overdurf. I did my trainer's training with John Overdurf. I assisted on that course like 7 times or something. So I got hooked.
And we benefit from it, so I'm glad that you did.
Yeah. We all do, right? So wonderful.
And by the way, Shawn, the tag that you have is HNLP. So can you clarify that for us? How is that different from
Humanistic neuro-linguistic psychology? So that is John Overdurf and Julie Silverthorne. They were married at the time. Essentially, if you think about NLP, it's kind of got this reputation as being, it was really based on programming, right? It was based on the metaphor that the human brain is a computer, and if it doesn't do what you want it to do, you can reprogram it, which is kind of chilly, right? It's kind of like a pretty cold way of looking at a person. So John and Julie said, well, that's kind of what we're doing, but we want it to be more based on an actual person, hence the humanistic. So it's the big difference between HNLP and NLP is that HNLP, well, first of all, it's not frozen. As you know, NLP is pretty much frozen in 1980 or something when they split, when Bandler and Grinder split. HNLP is a developing thing, and it's more conversational. It doesn't go like, okay, the 6-step reframe, step 1, right? It doesn't do that. It's more conversational.
Nice.
So those are the differences. But it uses all the NLP concepts of submodalities and anchoring and all these things. The anchoring is not like, oh, now I'm going to anchor you. Right? It's not that. It's using words and tonality, the client's words and tonality to anchor states.
Okay.
So it's much more interactive and humanistic and psychological. Is that enough?
All right.
Train with John. John is really, really good. So train with John, but he's very advanced. So if you don't know something about NLP, don't train with John.
So you need to know some of the frozen stuff first.
You have to know the frozen stuff first, I would say. If you just go and train with John, it will kind of, it might be over your head if you're not used to at least the NLP stuff. Or so.
All right. So the tarot, I'm fascinated. Yeah. I'm fascinated. And I saw when we first got on, I saw that you guys were sharing decks, or you were showing some cards, and Karen was talking about some that she have. I have the Aquarian tarot, and I have
is that where you keep the fish?
No. And I have Aleister Crowley, an Aleister Crowley deck, and I have a Michelangelo tarot deck, which is rather interesting because the symbols are all screwed up. Or not Michelangelo rather, but Leonardo, who I met. And what's the other one? I have one that's based on mythological tarot or something like that, but it's like Greek mythology, and it seems to have an emphasis on Jason and the Argonauts, and I can't make heads or tails of it in terms of putting it together with the Rider-Waite and with the other decks. So why don't we start there? Tell us a little bit about the tarot, and I think you were beginning to do that when we were offline in the pre-show, but yeah.
So the tarot has been around for a long time. Nobody really knows how long it's been around, or what it was for, or really anything else about it. The earliest things we know about it, they used to make decks of cards from woodcuts. So they would carve out the picture of a card, and then they would dip it in ink, and they would put it on a piece of paper, on a big board, and then they would cut them into cards. And the ones they didn't use just became like spare pieces of paper, and they would use them as insulation in the walls of houses. Right? And so those are really the earliest things we have, are these pre-cut sheets of tarot cards, wood stamped, with no real explanation as to what the purpose of them was. So there's there's a number of different threads. So some people say, well, it was a card game, right? It's a pack of cards, it was a card game. Some people say, no, it was used for divination, right? To tell the future. It was really used as that. Some people say it was used to code information, secret information, like the Cathars. So the Cathars in Europe were a Gnostic Christian sect who were persecuted by the Catholic Church. No offense, Michael. And some of this, or one particular tarot deck, supposedly captured the story of the Cathars and was used as sort of like a memory palace. So there's all sorts of stories. Nobody really knows. The mythology. Well, let's talk about the structure of a deck. So a deck has basically two parts. It's got a major arcana and it's got a minor arcana. And the minor arcana is essentially the same as a modern deck of cards. The only difference being there's 4 court cards, not 3. And the traditional decks of cards actually have pip cards. So this is the 6 of cups from an old deck. Okay, it's got 6 cups on it.
Mm-hmm.
The major arcana is much more interesting because it's got symbols on it. So, for example, this is from the same deck I just showed you. This is the magician, right? It's a picture of a guy with his magical tools. This is the priestess. Ooh, she's shiny. There you go. And this is the tower, right? So those are three cards I picked.
Those are nice.
Yeah, from the major arcana. So the major arcana is this list of symbols, and it essentially comes from this idea of the Egyptians of daytime and nighttime, right? As hypnotists, we might think of this as being the conscious mind being daytime and the unconscious mind as being nighttime. And if you trace your pathway through the major arcana, each card is numbered, you'll find that the first half of the major arcana, the archetypes are people, like the emperor, the empress, the magician, the priestess, and so on. But then you get halfway through and you reach the wheel of fortune, where the wheel turns, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going down into the nighttime. And the second half of the major arcana, although they're archetypes which involve movement or situation. So, for example, the tower, where you see the tower is falling, is in the second half. So it's in the unconscious part of the major arcana. Cool. So that's the dim and distant past. In about 1910 or so, they came out with a new deck called the Rider-Waite. And the Rider-Waite has basically the same pictures in terms of the major arcana. It was based on the traditional decks. So just to give you an example, let me do the tower. So this is an old deck with the tower, and this is the Rider-Waite deck, right? So you'll see that for the major arcana, the pictures are pretty much the same. But what they did is they took the minor arcana and they turned each of the pip cards. So that's the Six of Cups. It now becomes a picture card, right? And this picture card is a situation, right? So we have a slightly older male child giving a cup to a younger girl child. Okay, so the minor arcana pip cards became situations that you might find in real life. Make sense?
Yeah.
And that's really one of the powerful things about the tarot deck, the Rider-Waite deck, and variations of the Rider-Waite deck. So if we take, we were talking about the Alice in Wonderland deck. So this is the Rider-Waite Six of Cups, and this is the Alice in Wonderland Six of Cups. Right, so basically, the symbols are the same, the pictures are the same, but they'll just put them in the context of Alice in Wonderland or Jason and the Argonauts, I guess, or whatever. So most decks you see now are variations of Rider-Waite. Yeah. Some of them are not. They have like these weird decks, but most decks are variations of the Rider-Waite deck. They're used if you read the tarot cards, i.e. you use them for quote-unquote divination. You lay the cards down in some kind of a spread. It could be a spread of one card, one extreme. It could be a spread of 10 or so cards if you look at the Celtic cross. And the position of the cards represents some aspect of the situation which the client has come to ask the cards for advice about. So that kind of gives everyone a baseline, I think, if people don't have background in the tarot.
Okay, so there's what the tarot is. Now, the part that we're especially interested in, of course, and I think we're going to go back and forth between these two different dialogues, is how does the tarot fit into the HNLP model of coaching?
So I was kind of surprised at the reaction at the Mid-America one, because I kind of thought everybody used the tarot for coaching. The fact that some people didn't, I'm like, really? Like, why not? So we look at the coaching or the change work. We say the change takes place in the space in between the client and the coach. So what do we mean? We mean the client brings their problem, puts it into that space. It's the coach's job to hold that space open for as long as the change work takes to process, and to bring resources, or to encourage the client to bring resources into that space, so the resource and the problem can exist side by side long enough for the problem to be integrated into the resource, or vice versa. So given that it's the space in between the coach and the client, the question then is, well, what should that space be? And that space can be anything. So that space could be your trance chair, and you put your client into a deep trance. It could be the NLP type of space in between, where you're doing the 6-step reframe, or the swish, or the squash, or whatever. It could be the HNLP, more of the conversational way. It could be EFT. All these things form a space in which the client can resolve their issue.
Okay.
Given that, the tarot cards themselves form a space. Right? They form a space which can be held open long enough for the client to get some change. So the client is bringing their problem, which in terms of the tarot is a question. Right? They're often called a querent, as you know.
Don't make references to my relatives.
I thought he was going to again. That's what I was laughing at.
Yeah. They say anchors don't work. Right? So
anchor management.
Right? And their question is, at its heart, is a problem. Right? A problem in love, or a problem in business, or whatever it might be. They're asking about something, and they believe there is something that might stop them from achieving that. The cards form the space in between, and the cards themselves bring a whole bunch of resources to that space. Okay, you can take your pick in terms of interpretation. If you pull the priestess, right, is that because the universe is telling you something, or is it random information? Either way works. Right? If you bring random information to the client whilst they're in the problem state, it's going to change the problem because it's not generally in that space. So if you want to believe the tarot draws in the energy of the universe, that's great. If you want to think it's like draw a random card, it still works anyway. Okay. So what's the relationship? Like, why? What's the relationship between the tarot per se and what we do? Well, the tarot has all sorts of awesome features that we see in the hypnosis world. Okay, and I'll show you a few, or tell you about a few. So I have my lovely assistant here, Jess. Right. So one thing, because like we love Milton Erickson, right? So we love things which show that a person's in trance. So if I take a card, so if I go to Jess, we have 3 cards here. Okay, we have the priestess, we have the magician, and we have the tower. So if I were to say to Jess, right now, which of those 3 cards is the most attractive to you in terms of energy?
The magician.
The magician. Okay. So if I say to Jess, can I borrow your hand, and take the card into your hand and take a look at it? Okay. We have here something that's called catalepsy. Right? We all know what that is, right? Your client's in catalepsy if their arm is still. This, from an Ericksonian point of view, is trance. Right? If someone's arm is in catalepsy, at least that part of their body is in trance. Right? No need for a trance induction. No need for a close your eyes. No need for waves of relaxation. Your client is automatically in trance if they hold the card in their hand. And I think I told this story at the Mid-America one. We had a group, I'm not sure if it was like a religious group or something, but they used to come in and use our space in New York, and they were worshippers of volcanoes or something. I don't really know what they did, but they used the tarot cards. And this was one thing they did, is they would get you to hold a tarot card in your hand. and say, take a look at the card, I'm going, oh, this is a trance induction. And I'm going, no, 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 we don't do trance induction. Right? This is just holding a card in your hand. But it's clearly it's a trance induction, as you see from Jess. Okay? There's many other aspects. If you take a problem, right, if you're doing a spread, typically one card is a representation of a problem. And you say to the client, take a look at that card, right? The card, that's the problem. You have dissociated them from the problem because now the problem is outside of themselves, right? No longer inside. It's no longer a problem they have inside. It's now something they can see outside of themselves. So it's dissociative. If you ask your client, Jess, when you look at the magician, what do you notice?
I notice his stance pointing to the heavens and the earth.
Mm-hmm. So we've got a visualization, right? The client is visualizing something, albeit on the card, there's a visualization there.
And so, what did she say?
She said she notes the staff, which points up. I'll just take this card for just a second. So if you take a look at the staff in his hand, it points up to heaven and down to earth, right? And that's a representation of as above, so below, right? So it's this idea that earth is a reflection of heaven. I'm sure that's somewhere in the Catholic Church. Okay, so there's all these aspects. And then if I say, so Jess, now float into the picture, step into the picture so you're with the magician. And if you're looking at Jess, you can see she's going into trance. Now float into the magician and look down at the tools on the table, right? This is called association, right? So there's all these different aspects just using one card, which we see all the time in trance.
Mm-hmm.
Catalepsy, visualization, dissociation, association. Resources, if Jess is drawn to the magician, then that forms a resource for Jess. And one of the things that we do in a reading, not everybody does it, but it's a good thing if you're reading in a coaching context, is to allow the client to choose one card which is going to represent them, is going to be a resource for them. So in this case, the magician.
Cool.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So there's all these links. If you see anyone who does a good reading, they're putting their client into trance. It's just the same. It's the same thing, just in a different format. So it forms the space in between. Now, in terms of coaching, so if you read the cards, the basic idea of reading the cards is divination, right? It's to foretell the future. Well, isn't that what we do as coaches and hypnotists?
Sure.
Right? If your client comes and says, Michael, tell me the future. Do you think I will quit smoking? Right? Then as a coach, you'll say, yes, of course.
Yes, of course.
Right? Because otherwise, why are they there? Right? So we as coaches are telling the future, and through the coaching modality, we don't just tell the future, we create the future jointly with the client.
So does that mean that you need to select the cards based upon the future that you're wanting to tell?
No. It depends on the spread. So in the Celtic Cross, there is a card which is called the outcome card, right? Which is kind of like where you're going to. So you want to be a little bit careful if you're using a spread that's got an outcome card, because if that is randomly chosen, and they get there and they go, oh man, that sucks, right? I mean, you don't want that. So
the death card.
Yeah. Well, the death card actually it's got a bad rap.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about death, it's about transformation. Right? It's about the smoker dies so the non-smoker can live. right? So the death card actually is a great card. It's not. It's just got a bad rap because it's got a skeleton on a horse who's got a big scythe. You know?
Yeah.
It's all an interpretation anyway, is it not?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just like a scary picture, right? It's like, ooh, there's a skeleton on a horse.
Right. Now I'm curious, Shawn, if it's important that Jess picked up the staff from Heaven and Earth. Does that have importance with that particular card as opposed to?
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So if you take any card, right? So my favorite card is the Fool. I wonder why, right? So the Fool card shows this guy. He's got his pack over his shoulder. He's got a flower in his hand. He's got his little dog, and he's just about to step off the edge of the cliff. Right? That's why it's the Fool card. The Fool card has many meanings, right? So if you think about the Fool card in terms of what that might mean in a coaching context, or indeed in general, right? For me, there are at least 3 types of fool. Okay, there's the wise fool, right? Chauncey Gardner, right? Peter Sellers, being there, right? Who he seems like he's simple, but he's saying things about gardening that people are then using as a metaphor for change or politics or whatever it is. Okay, so there's the wise fool who says something that kind of doesn't make sense, but it's used as a teaching tale, right? Like the Sufis, right? Like the guy who knocks on the Sufi's house and says, "Are you in?" Right, and the Sufi says, "No, I'm not. He's not here." Right, he's gone away. He's ridden his donkey away. Right, the guy listens and he hears the donkey braying in the backyard. And he says, "But no, he must be here. His donkey's here. I hear his donkey." Right, and the Sufi says, "Do you believe me or the donkey?" Right, so that's one type of fool, is the wise fool. Right, and we use this in certain types of modality, such as provocative therapy. Right, the coach becomes the wise fool. So the client says, "Oh, I've got a fear of speaking in public," and the coach says, "Well, what's your star sign?" And the client says, "I'm Sagittarius." He goes, "Well, that's why you've got a fear of speaking in public then." Right, and what does the client do with that? They have to try and integrate it, and they'll probably say, "I don't think it's because I'm a Sagittarius." Right? It starts to break up the problem. This is being a wise fool for the coach. Then there's the foolish fool, right? A lot of our clients are foolish fools. So if you have a client who comes and they say, "Oh, I smoke, right? It costs me a bunch of money. It makes me cough. I'm scared about my health," right? They're kind of a foolish fool. But a foolish fool is somebody who's doing something for a reason which is not obvious, right? We'd say a secondary gain or the positive intention. So that's kind of like a foolish fool. And then there's this idea, which I'm sure Michael knows, the fool for God, right? Like Steve Jobs, right? Like the guy who totally trusts the outcome. Yeah. So as a therapist or as a coach or whatever, you totally trust that your client has all the resources they need to make the change, right? It's one of the presuppositions of NLP. And your client has to believe that as well. So that's kind of on the positive side. On the negative side, if you have someone who comes with like a gambling addiction, it's like, "I trust that this time I will win. My number will come up," right? So that's another type of trusting fool, but that's sort of like an inversion, right? If the card is inverted, it kind of means it's the opposite, right? So all these cards have so much information, both in terms of the symbols. The rose, the dog, is your soul or your unconscious mind, which turns into a mighty white horse at the end of the major arcana.
Let me just interrupt 1 second, Shawn, and ask, are you making this up as you go along? Are these your thoughts, or is this written down someplace that the dog has this particular significance?
Yeah, the dog, like there's lots and lots of people have done all sorts of interpretation of cards in terms of the colors, the flowers, the type of clothing, all sorts of interpretation. Obviously, it's interpretation, right? So if you read two different interpretations, they'll be different somewhat, right? But some themes are like fairly obvious. If you see the same symbol appearing in different cards, it's got a recurring type of meaning. The full interpretation, that's kind of my interpretation. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff out there on the fool archetype. Fool for God, the wise fool. The Sufis have the wise fool in spades in their stories. It's used in Shakespeare. So the fool is obviously something where the archetype appears repeatedly in literature and religion and theater and so on. So it's kind of a mix, right?
So I guess one of the things I was asking was, is there a right and a wrong answer to cards, or is it free-flowing as you go?
Here's the thing. So I think I lost track of the question. So with a staff, right? Depending upon what the client sees in the card, that's obviously the most important thing for the client, right? So if the client says, this is what I see and this is what I notice, that's the part of the card which has the most energy, right? If you're a practitioner of clean language, symbolic modeling, you can use that in terms of getting the client to interpret the symbols in the card. So if we give the card back to Jess, right, and we know, Jess, that you notice the staff which points up to heaven and the ground, what kind of staff is that?
Magical one.
A magical staff. Okay, and what kind of magic is that?
Like raw nature.
Raw nature. And when there's raw nature, whereabouts is raw nature?
The cosmos.
The cosmos, right? So you can take that one little piece of the card and build it up into this big resource with clean language.
Right. Cool.
And it starts with what she notices about the card.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you've got a client who says, well, I don't know, you could talk about the archetype.
Right.
So you can go either way, but sure, I mean, once you've got an entry point, it's really easy to use a modality such as clean language to build a resource that's really, really powerful.
Let's step back a step, if you don't mind, and say, how do you get into using the tarot? Do your clients come in and express an interest, or do you say, hey, let's pull out this tarot deck? How do you introduce?
So there are different types of clients. So let's say there are two types of clients, right? There's your coaching client who comes for business, right? And they go, do not do that woo-woo stuff with me, right? That is, I just want the coaching. I don't want like that trance chair thing and all this stuff. I don't want that. I just want the coaching. Just coach me. And on the other extreme, right, there's the client who comes in and goes, you know, I was Cleopatra in a past life. Can we do some past life work? Right. So these are your two types of. There's a spectrum, right? If you have the second type of client, chances are they're going to be interested in tarot, right? We have a bunch of tarot decks in the office. You know, they're laying out there. So if a client goes, oh, you read the client, you read the tarot, right? Yes. Okay. Can you read my cards? Right. So we don't I don't anyway say we're going to use the cards as a coaching tool, right? Because we have this idea of the space in between, and we'll just draw these random cards and that will help you to change, right? We frame it as, yes, we are reading the tarot cards. Right. Now, the first type of client, right, the guy who comes in and goes, do not do that woo-woo. I'm not interested in the woo-woo stuff. Just want the coaching. You know that if you have that type of a client over a period of time, right, do not put me into trance, right? Like session number 3, they're starting to look at the trance chair. Right? Because they've already been in trance, it's just a conversational trance. Right? And they're starting to say, that chair looks really comfortable. Maybe I could go and sit in it. Right? And then you're off to the races anyway. So you know, it depends on the client. Some clients are going to be more open, some clients less open. It's not something which I have to do with a client. If the client wants to, then it's fun. If they don't, I've got a lot of other tools. Let us tap.
It's not something you put on your website
Altogether
and
now.
advertise. You're not advertising hypnosis, tarot hypnosis, or anything like that.
Hypno-tarot.
I mean, you could do.
Of
Right?
course, yeah, of course you could.
Not something I do, but yes. I mean, the way we use the decks most is for ourselves. Right? Is to self-coach, or I'll coach Jess, or Jess will coach me, or Sarah will coach Jess, and we'll do the spread, and we'll read the spread like what should we do in the next year for business? Right? Oh, let's get the tarot cards out, and we do the spread, right? And even if it's random information, it makes you think in new ways.
Right. Right.
But,
And
no, I do not advertise myself as the hypno tarot guy. Right? I don't, but you could do. I don't think there's anything wrong in doing that.
And if you did, in fact, then you would get those. Then you would get those clients that would be the ones that would be ready for that.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And people just love the tarot. It's like if you tell anyone, "Oh yes, I read the cards," they'll be fascinated, right? I mean, there's two types of fascination, right? There's like, "Ooh, don't read my cards," right? But they're fascinated, and then there's, "Oh, can you bring in your deck and read my cards?" Right? Those are kind of the two responses. Nobody is indifferent if you tell them you read the tarot cards.
Now, I've already had this experience, Shawn. As soon as I saw you do this at Mid-America, I pulled out an old tarot deck and started looking at it, bought a new tarot deck, got together with some friends, and we practiced it. I took it for Thanksgiving to my sister-in-law's house and said, "Oh my God, there'll be lots of people who want their tarot cards read. I can practice and practice." And my sister-in-law saw it and said, "Oh my God, take that out to the car. Her husband won't allow that in our house."
Yeah, right.
So you get that response too.
So you go out and you bring the Ouija board back.
Well, right.
I keep trying to get a Ouija board, but these guys won't let me.
All right. So why, while we're on that, I know that's not our topic, but why is it okay to do tarot but not the Ouija board?
I don't know, Jess. They say the Ouija board is fine as long as you do it alone in a graveyard at midnight and you don't see the guy. It's like, as long as you follow those rules, you're good.
Standing inside a circle of salt and.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. Well, I mean, I
kept my tarot deck. I kept my tarot deck, but I threw away my Ouija board after watching The Exorcist.
The Ouija board, you're inviting something in. So I guess that's the difference.
Ah.
So I am banned from doing the Ouija board.
No inviting things in.
Yeah. Yeah, these guys are always throwing things out of the door. It's like, that spirit cannot be in our apartment. Leave. So I would not be a popular guy if I did the Ouija board in the apartment. But next time we meet, we'll do it.
That's right.
That's right. Michael.
That's great. That's great. All right. Well, so what happens next? So we've got a client. They begin to take me sort of through how does a session proceed from there?
Right. So I generally want a client to pick a significator card. So a card that will be their resource, their like tuck it in their pocket card. And
is that like a divinator? Not a that represents the person or something, or
yeah.
Okay.
It's like a special card that is their card. And for us, if you think about it as like a deep trance identification.
So for Jess, you pick 3 cards and let her choose. With a client, would you spread the deck out and let them pick one out of the whole deck?
Yeah, or I might, well, not the whole deck. So typically I want them to pick from the first half of the major arcana. If you remember, the first half of the major arcana are really archetypes that you can identify as archetypes. The priestess, the magician, the emperor, the empress. The second half is more situational cards, so that it's a little more abstract. So I would typically want them to pick a card from the first half. So it brings it down to sort of like 10 cards or something. I might guide them towards one card, depending upon what I thought they might need. but they surprise you as well. It's like in Mid-America, she says, "The Fool! The Fool is my card. I want the Fool." Right? So it was very easy because she leapt on the Fool.
What a foolish thing to say.
Yeah.
Okay, so proceed.
Right. So I like that card because it gives you a resource you can always come back to. And I would always use some kind of clean language, symbolic type of modeling to build the resource up. So I've always got this big resource I can pop the person into. And if you remember from Mid-America, all we did was to get the resource card in one hand, the problem card, which was actually the tower he chose in the other hand, or I guided her to. And then we'd say, okay, take a look at the tower, and she'd go. Take a look at the Fool, and she'd go. Take a look at the tower. Fool, tower, right? So all we're doing is a collapsing anchors, right? And then eventually I think we put one hand on the other hand and then integrated it. So the significator card is for me a very powerful tool. Not everybody does those if they read. In fact, I'd say most people don't, but it's a powerful tool. Then you have to do a spread. Now for me, the Celtic Cross is the best spread. And this comes down to when you're doing a reading, the relationship between different cards in the reading. Okay, so the Celtic Cross has 3 cards that go from left to right. These cards are the past, the present, and the future. Right? For anyone in the audience who does NLP, this is called a timeline. Right? So anything in terms of timeline that you can do in NLP, you can then apply to those 3 cards. There's a card above and a card below. Sometimes the card above is what's known and below is what's not known, or conscious and unconscious, or something like that. If you're doing any sort of attention shifting coaching or that type of thing where you're shifting your client's attention, the card that represents the unknown is going to allow you to do those patterns within the reading of the spread. There's then 4 cards on the right-hand side. And those cards are how you or how the client sees the situation, and the house, how the rest of the world sees that. In terms of NLP, this is called perceptual positions, right? So any technique of NLP can be modeled depending upon the spread that you use. And the Celtic Cross gives you like an awful lot of different options. But if you have a client and they say, oh, there's this thing I want to do and there's this thing I want to do. Okay, let's pick 2 cards, right? Hold those in your hands. So you want to do this, but you want to do this as well, right? And you can't do both. This is called a visual squash, right? So any pattern in terms of NLP, you can replicate with the cards. So depending upon what you think you might want to do in terms of NLP, you can just pick a spread that does the same thing. So it depends. I generally use the Celtic Cross just because I like it and it's got so much information in there. But if it was a shorter piece of work, I might just use two cards or something.
Okay. So, and when you do the Celtic Cross, I mean, I noticed first of all there was that little bit of DTI with the significator card that I think is just fantastic. That's one of the things that really draws me to this. But also you mentioned choosing out of the first half of the major arcana.
Yeah.
And situationally, I can see how the second half of the major arcana might very well be useful for context, right?
Well, the context is generally the pip cards of the minor arcana.
Okay, because that's what I was going to say. When you're laying out the rest of the spread or whatever else it is, however it is that you proceed with that, you are then playing with a full deck, as it were.
I see what you did there. That was
yeah, but is that right? Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you think about the tower, right? So this is in the major arcana, the second half of the major arcana. Well, this, as Jess said, is who? Shiva?
Shiva.
This is Shiva,
Sure.
right? Right, this stands for the archetype of, hey, you think you've got everything? Well, guess what? You're just about to get kicked in the teeth, right? You're just about to lose all this stuff that you think you had, right? As John Overdurf says, the third guna is a bitch,
Mm-hmm.
right? You get all this stuff, you're going to lose it again, right? So that's an archetypical card.
All right.
Versus the four suits. If you think of the four suits of the minor arcana, right, there are swords, rods or staffs, cups, and discs or coins or pentacles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these are swords are thoughts, right? Thoughts cut through to the matter. Cups are emotions.
Sure.
Okay. Discs or pentacles are physical, right? It's sometimes used as money, often in like a tarot reading, right? Will I be wealthy, right? But it means the physicality of the body or the things that are going on around. And staffs are the creative energy. It's like an energetic card. And each of the pip cards in the minor arcana stands for a situation which you might meet in real life. So any client thing they bring is going to be represented in one or more cards. So we talked about the Six of Cups, right? The six is always a relationship that's not equal, right? For all the suits, right? So in this case, this young man is bigger than the girl, right? And he's giving her some emotional support, right? That could be a good thing or a bad thing, right? So the pip cards of the minor arcana, as you're playing with the full deck, are really going to represent all sorts of aspects of the issue which the client has. Now this comes down to, because everyone is thinking like, well, if you're just randomly laying out the cards, which is what you do in a reading, you won't get the right cards in the right place. Well, you do, right? If you do a reading, 9 out of 10 of the cards, or maybe 8 out of 10, are absolutely in the right place. Sometimes it's 10 out of 10. Okay, I don't know if that's like the energy of the universe, or if when you deal with the cards enough, the interpretation is so flexible, as Karen said, that they're always in the right place because you can interpret them in different ways.
Sure.
But you find, I never find that when you lay out the cards, it doesn't make any sense. Maybe 1 or 2 cards, but generally all or most of the cards, you'll say, oh, I see what the problem is. It's this card.
Even though I spoke about flexibility, Shawn, there is a rule question I have about this, which is when you're laying them down, you say past, present, and future. If the cards are facing me, past, present, and future is left, middle, and right.
Yeah.
But if I'm reading a client, do they have to be turned around to face the client, or does it matter?
Well, it certainly matters, yes, because if you're reading, almost anyone who reads in a serious way does inversions, right? So this card is entirely different to this card.
Right.
This card implies a lack of something, or a blocked energy, or a misguided energy. This card implies the full energy, the positive energy of the card. So it makes a huge difference. Now, if I'm coaching, be it the tarot or something else, I want to be sitting next to the client, right? I don't like...
Got it. That makes more sense. Right.
So we're both on the same page. If you don't do that, you need to understand which way the card is, right? And in general, I would say it's from the client's perspective.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I know some hypnotists have a desk in their room, and they sit on one side of the desk, and the client sits on the other side of the desk. I don't get that.
No, we happened to be sitting at my kitchen table when that question came up. So it wasn't a hypnosis session, but it was, oh my gosh, is this all backwards because you're looking at it or I'm
I would
looking
generally do a kitty corner if you're at a table like that, or side by side. So we generally coach this way. So the chairs are 45, and I want to be generally on the client's right because that's in their future. So that is not an issue per se.
Yeah. Well, that was a simple answer. Sit on the same side of the table, and it won't be a problem.
Yeah. Or kitty corner, and you can sort of do a diagonal.
Let me just mention real quick, because everybody's muted. If you have questions, please write either I've got a question in the chat room or write your question in the chat room, because Michael and I can keep track of that. And if you've got questions, we'll be sure and get them asked.
Yeah.
If you have questions,
and
we
will have some dedicated time at the end as well, where we'll just ask for questions. But if something comes up, as we're going along, be sure to use the chat room. If anybody's new to this and doesn't know about the chat room, by the way, down at the bottom of your screen, you will probably see a little thing, like a thought bubble that says chat underneath of it. And if you click on that, it will open up a chat room on the side of your screen so that you can see what's going on. So feel free to do that. All right.
So how does this end with, then you've done the tarot reading, do you end then with a more formal trance state? Or, because I believe that they'd be in a trance during that and all of the change we made right then, do you follow up to solidify it or ratify it with a formal trance state?
It doesn't have to be formal, but yes.
Yeah.
You can dress casually.
You can dress down.
If you remember in Mid-America, what was the name of the lady?
Ooh,
Linda. Is that right?
Linda Williamson?
Yeah. She went into trance with the catalepsy on the fall, right? And then
that was Denise Oatley Hall, who was her,
Denise, you're right, Denise. Yeah. I like the finger thing. And then halfway through the talk, I passed her the fall, and she immediately went into trance. Right? She completely just like went, boom.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's just a reinduction, and you'll be fractionating the client through the session, especially if you do more than one. Typically, a lot of clients will come for coaching, and then they'll say, "Can you read my cards?" So the readings, just in practical terms, tend to be towards the end of the session or after the session, after the session.
Right.
But if they come for a reading, then they will be in trance. If they happen to close their eyes partway through, that's so much the better.
Right.
Annetta has a question here, and I'd like to just offer it for clarification. It's not too dissimilar from something I asked just a little bit back, but just for clarity, she says Shawn talked about the outcome card, and how does he influence that? I think we did talk about the variety of interpretations possible, but she says I could see that there are cards that may not be ideal in an outcome in certain sessions. So maybe once again you can.
So the big thing the way of dealing with this thing is you spend time up front with the client finding out what the question means. Mm-hmm. Right? So the question might be kind of like a neutral type of question. If you just did a reading, you could dive into the cards and use the cards to guide the conversation. But if you're coaching, I like to understand what the client means when they ask the question, what their outcome is, and what they think the blocks are to that. And then when you reach the final card, if it's like the 10 of swords or something, where the guy's got 10 swords in his back, you don't necessarily need to say, well, this is the outcome. So it gives you the flexibility to deal with that last card in a way that helps the client and doesn't sort of lead to something adverse.
So give me an example, would you, of turning that 7 swords in your back into a positive? I mean, if you flip that over, if that flipped over and I looked at that, I'm thinking that's a bad outcome. So I would love to hear you turn that around.
Well, you don't necessarily say, this is the outcome card.
Well, right.
Dum, 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 flip. Oh, right? So you turn over the card, and if it's a certain thing, you can gloss over it, or you can deal with it appropriately. Generally, most of the cards turn out the way you think they should. So by the time you get to the outcome card, your client is done anyway. I mean, they've got their outcome. I mean, not their outcome in the world, but they've got the thing they came in for, right? Mm-hmm. They are a non-smoker by the end of the session.
Clara had a question too. Do you ask a client to pick a card that relates to their problem or to their solution?
In terms of this, I mean,
if you're going to have them pick a card, if you're like you show the three cards and say pick one, are you asking them to focus on their problem or on their solution?
Neither. So this is their archetype for the purposes of the session or the work.
Okay.
It is them.
It's got nothing to do with the problem per se. Obviously, the problem is inside their head because that's what they came with, or the question is inside their head. So they will pick an appropriate card. But no, it's just like what card represents the best of you, or are you most drawn to? So you need to read your client, right? If your client comes in and goes, "Ooh," don't say which card represents you, right? Because they'll pick a miserable card.
Yeah.
Eeyore.
What?
The Eeyore card. The
Eeyore card. Yeah. Like, oh, my life is so miserable. Right. So you need to phrase the question. If they come in and they're like bouncy, right? If they're Tigger, right? Then you go, okay, which card is you? And they go, oh, the fool. I leap off cliffs. I'm fantastic, right? Because I have springs on my feet. But if they're miserable, you don't. You say, which card do you aspire to, or something, right? Or you pick the card for them if it's that bad, right? Yeah. Do you have them lay out, e.g.? Oh, for the spread. Let me just this up.
I think that's for the Celtic Cross spread, yeah.
Celtic Cross to begin with.
So
or do you work with one card?
In terms of a reading, I mean, I do a traditional. So you get the client to shuffle the cards in some way. They can either shuffle them or they can mix them up on the tabletop. And then you say, place one card there, face down. Place another card there, face down. So the whole spread is done face down. And then one by one in a certain order, they turn the cards over. Right? So each time they turn over a card, you're interpreting that card for the first one. The next one, you're interpreting that card, but also the relationship of that card to the first one, right? So if you're doing the timeline piece, past and present and future, you start with the past, and then you move into the present, and then you move into the future, and each time you're interpreting it as part of this extending timeline. Okay, so the cards are laid out face down in a random way, and then one by one, they're turned over, and then you interpret that card, and then you turn over another one. You interpret that card in light of the first one. You may go back to the first one and reinterpret that in light of the second one, and so on. So it's a picture that builds. It's not like, whoa, everything's there at the same time, right? Because then they'll jump around, right? You'll be talking about the first card, and they'll be looking at the seventh card or something.
All right.
Yes. Sorry, reading the chat room and keeping up it's a little difficult.
Yeah.
But it sounds to me like a lot of it too is like the dance of hypnosis.
Yeah.
I mean, hypnosis is a dance between you and your client, and reading these cards is the same, is it not?
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's exactly the same.
I mean, I guess one could go with exactly what the little card that comes with the deck says and all of those interpretations of the card, or you can veer off. Oh, no, don't do that at all.
Yeah, I would not do that, because that type of interpretation, typically it says, this card means blah,
Right.
blah, 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 blah. And that's not where you want to go. So you have to have the flexibility to allow the client to bring what's in the card into the space in between. Right? You can do it as well. So if you have to interpret a card for the client because they're not really playing along as deeply, that's fine. But if the client is playing along, it's really, really easy. But you don't want to. Okay, let me take out the book, and I will tell you what this card knows. So if you want to get like a start, and you don't want to spend too much time learning all this stuff, the cards have pictures on them, right? So you can take a look at this card and tell someone what the meaning of that card is. Why is Michael frozen? Like, he looks like...
Oh, he probably stepped away to get some tea, but you could I would never want to tell them what it means. I would want to always elicit from them what they believe it means.
Yes. So it depends on your client, right? I mean, some clients are like...
Right.
Right. So then you have to kind of lead them and open up a little bit and offer them options and see which one they bite on, right? It's like fishing. Right? Well, it could be this, or it could be that, or it could be, yeah, I like that one, right? So it's the dance again, right? I mean, it's good if the client leads. That's the best type of dance, as long as they're leading in the right direction towards their outcome. But if they won't lead, then you kind of have to lead a little bit.
And I would still leave it open so that they could input something.
Absolutely.
They can be a part of it. They're the ones who have to actually interpret.
For sure. This is not a reading like this spread means X, right? Most of the input comes from the client, right, as to what the meaning of the card is.
Otherwise, we're fortune tellers.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really love that. I mean, at least in terms of my sense of hypnosis and what it is that we are doing, I'd like to think that it is evocative in nature, and so to whatever degree that the technique doesn't get in the way of that, it becomes a blessing, and this one certainly doesn't. Your deep trance identification with the card is a lovely thing at the beginning. And there was something that I learned a long time ago. I was studying some Golden Dawn material like a million years ago, and there was an exercise that was scrying the tarot. And it was taking one card like each day or whatever it was, and doing a lovely little ritual, and then diving into the world of that card and discovering what it is that you find there. The idea that now you have this huge collection of archetypes for people to be able to enter into and to explore is just a wonderful idea.
So I mean, the major arcana, the really nice thing about the major arcana, we talked about the Egyptian daytime and nighttime. The major arcana is also the hero's journey. So if you use that in your change work, if you have a longer term client and you're moving them through the hero's journey, like the major arcana is the hero's journey. Right, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So a great way, like a variation of what you just said, that's very often used, is to lay the cards out in a theater, visualized theater, right? And you have sort of the play on the stage, and then you float into each card, you associate into each card, and look at the play from the perspective of the card. So that's a great way to really get a feel for the meaning for you of each card.
Oh, nice.
Jerry just offered that his wife is a therapist and uses soul collage with her clients to make their own card. Yep. That's a very cool thing too.
Yeah, there's a site. I forget the name of the site, Jess.
I don't know. I have it saved.
Yeah.
They make decks and things.
There's a site where you can go on and make your own deck of cards. if you make one deck and it's for your use, I don't think there's a restriction in terms of copyright. So you can put on your favorite kitty cats or whatever.
6 of Adam Lambert's, for example, Karen would have.
How did you know that that's exactly what I envisioned? I saw all the cards in different Adam Lambert outfits.
Yeah, so like Star Wars or whatever, we have. Jess has got a deck. I've got a deck.
Did you find a Harry Potter deck? Were you looking for a Harry Potter deck?
I'm not really a fan. I mean, I'm not not a fan of those books, but I don't read those books or watch those films.
Somebody told me that they either were looking for or found a Harry Potter deck. I mean, I guess they're
I
terrible.
would be amazed if there's not one, but
right.
everything else. There's a magician deck I've got that's very nice. I've got about 50 decks in the apartment. So.
Oh, wow.
I really like your Alice in Wonderland. I can really see how that could be very beneficial with clients because it seems somehow less threatening than a tarot deck. Here, we're just looking at this and giving interpretations to these pretty little Alice in Wonderland pictures.
Excuse me.
And yet, here's the question, congruity. I have a feeling that there are probably some people who they may be okay with a little bit of woo-woo, but it needs to be conservative woo-woo. Alice might not work as well for somebody as something that's much more traditional and
yeah, I mean, it's the preference of your client. It's your preference. If I had a client and I knew they were into something or other and I had a deck, then I would use that deck for sure.
So I'm visual, I'm towards, and I'm a Rider Waite. My notes.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Interesting folder you'd have going there.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously don't do this with every client.
No.
Client specific.
Yeah. This is like a minority. I mean, I'm not a tarot reader per se. I wouldn't put myself out there. I wouldn't charge a client for it, I don't think. Unless, I mean, if they specifically ask me, I would consider it. So it's kind of done as like part of a session or like a fun thing at the end of a session or whatever.
I was surprised, Shawn, to see you present this. It was a brilliant presentation at Mid-America, but I was surprised because it just seemed, I guess, more woo-woo than I saw you being.
Well, I look at everything as being a metaphor.
Right.
So,
from that perspective, that's why I fell in love with it. That's why I went out and
I see the neuroscience as being a metaphor. I don't think the neuroscience is true. Right? A brain area. I mean, there's no such thing as a brain area. Right? There's not like I pull out the I don't know, this part of the brain or that part of the brain. They're all just areas of the brain that are used for certain things. So all the neuroscience stuff really is someone has taken something and packaged it down and given it a name and a label, but it's not literally true. It may be indicative, but it's not.
But more like phrenology almost at that point.
What's that? The bumps?
More like yeah, exactly. So your skull is shaped this well, but it was about reading the head, and they're saying this part is more developed, or this is that, or so this part of your head.
But I'll definitely turn up to the chapter where you talk about that. Okay, let me feel your head.
So speaking of chapters, you and I think it relates to this, and I hope I'm not making too big of a leap, but maybe you can create the connection for us. Karen, you said something about you didn't realize that Shawn was quite so esoteric or so woo-woo, and yet remember these are the folks that have the Tree of Life coaching model as well.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Is there a relationship between these?
They are intimately linked. I don't know if they're intimately linked because of some past linkage or because someone has kind of linked them over time, but they are completely linked. There are 10 points on the Tree of Life. There are 10 pip cards. We also have 10 fingers, so that may be the underlying cause. There's 22 major arcana. There's 22 pathways on the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life is a picture of the tarot deck, basically.
Right.
So
And all
I
of
didn't
it
go into that because it makes everything very, very complex. But if you're into the tree of life, it makes interpretation of the tarot very easy, because you can just like mentally trace pathways in the tree of life, and it will show you the relationship between cards.
and all of this has a relationship of some sort to Kabbalah, does it not?
Well, the Kabbalah is the tree of life, right? The
Oh,
tree of
well.
life is the principal tool of the Kabbalah. Kabbalah per se, I don't really understand, because it's sort of a coded system. If you're not into the system, you don't really know what the Kabbalists, I don't know, are talking about, because it's all coded for the people who know it. It's supposed to be a code. But the tree of life is fundamentally maps out the beliefs of the Kabbalah as well.
Do you work with kids, Shawn? You work
I work?
You
No.
work with children? No.
No.
If, would you use the tarot deck in any different way with kids than you would with adults?
Well, I would use a different deck for sure. I might use the Alice in Wonderland deck.
Yeah.
But you'd have to also check with the parents, obviously, because if they have a negative view, then you would be toast, I would imagine. You'd be on like the news for, oh, Karen Hand introduced my 6-year-old child to the devil via the tarot.
Yeah, my response to that would be, you brought your 6-year-old child to the witch doctor. So I guess we got to start with reporting fingers here, right?
I don't work with kids. I mean, it's just being a man, it's just too awkward, and you would need to have the parents in there potentially, and then you have all that weird dynamic. So it's fine. I'm not saying don't work with kids. I'm just saying personally, for me, it's too messy.
There was a question up here about would there be a difference, and I can definitely see the difference in using a more fairy tale type deck if you were going to do that. And I don't know.
The Rider-Waite is very sort of symbolic, weird pictures.
Yeah.
But the Alice in Wonderland deck.
I just think that's so pretty. I have to have one of those. I love that. So
Yeah,
I'm wondering if we ought to open this up to questions. There have been a lot of questions that came up on the chat room, but I'm wondering, I'm going to open up to gallery view and see if
somebody would like to speak with Shawn, and that would be a great idea. So if you've got a question and your microphone is not unmuted, feel free to unmute it. Similarly, down at the bottom of your screen somewhere, most likely, you will see a little microphone that, when you're muted, has a red line through it. If you just click on that, that will open up your microphone once again, and you can talk. So if somebody has a question, Catherine, you've raised a point here as well that you might want to mention, and I'll leave that up to you if you do. We are 5 minutes away from ending our evening, so we'll want to give him a chance to get in here.
Well, I'd like to give Shawn a chance, because I don't know the last time you were on the virtual chapter, Shawn. I'd like to give you a chance to talk about what it typically is that you do in your office, because tarot is a small thing that you do. So give us an overview of what happens with the intelligent hypnotist there in New York.
Well, with me, we all have different practices. So Jess does a lot of Zoom work or phone work. I think that's the majority of her practice. Most of my clients are business clients, business coaching, long term. So I see the smokers and stuff for short term, but most of my clients come back on a regular basis. That I think it's a great thing for them, because they get to develop and grow. Most of it, therefore, is generative coaching versus the therapeutic type of coaching. So this is the client who comes in and says, I'm great, I'm completely awesome, and I want to be better. Right? I have this fantastic amount of confidence and this, but not all the time. Right? So I want to extend it a little bit.
That's interesting. So you're not seeing people who come and say, I'm having trouble speaking in front of my coworkers, or you're not getting...
I do see those. Very often they turn into the longer term type of client.
Got it.
So, those clients are great, and a lot of those issues are really quick. If it's that type of fear of speaking in public, that's a one session, although you may need to reinforce it. But most of my clients are generative. They come back. Sometimes they come back for like past life type of things, or more symbology type of guided trance. But a lot of them are business. So they're in business and they want to grow and develop and get better and get a promotion and make more money. And
so they are actually, I'm guessing, are seeing a business coach, and they're not asking for hypnosis as such.
Correct. That's how they come in. And then after a period of time, then they go like, well, that trance chair looks awfully comfortable.
Well, yeah. And
so
hypnosis happens anyway, so.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the business coaching, and they're like, no, I'm just going to go and sit in the chair. Put me into trance.
Fix me.
Yeah, it's like evolution.
Just an FYI, Susie, thank you for this. Aisha Lerner and Mark Lerner created a deck called Inner Child Cards, a fairy tale tarot, published by Bear and Company, in case somebody's interested in looking into that and likes to work with children.
Nice. All right, well, as I look, it's only a couple minutes before the end. We have like 2 minutes left, so forgive my interruption. I'm going to give you a chance, Shawn, for a moment to consider if there are any final thoughts that you might want to leave us with. But before you do, logistically, I'm just going to interrupt to tell you all, everyone, that this session has been recorded, as you know, and that the recording will be posted on the virtual chapter Facebook group tomorrow around about noon. So you'll want to see it again because you just won't believe what you saw the first time, and you want to make sure. So it'll be there for you.
Did you really say that?
Yeah.
And it will also be posted on the IACT IMDHA forum. If you're a member of IACT or IMDHA, you can see it there on the Mind Matters forum, and in our YouTube group as well. Virtual Chapter has a YouTube group, and all of our previous episodes are there. So you might want to check it out there. And those of you who are members of IACT or IMDHA or of IHF, who endorses us, or the ICBCH, and probably other friendly organizations, you can get CEUs for spending your time with us this evening. So contact your local group if you don't know how to get your CEUs, but keep track, get credit, your earning points as you sit here being thoroughly entertained and educated by the wonderful Shawn Carson. So hi, Shawn. Once again, welcome back. We are about ready to say goodnight to you. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with?
I would just like to say we are teaching a 3-day pre-conference in Las Vegas on Ericksonian. Unique approach. This is not like the language patterns. Much more than that, it's sort of DTI with Milton Erickson. You will become super smart in terms of Ericksonian type of trance work.
And that's in August at HPTI, right?
August at HPTI in Las Vegas, right? I mean, where could you go that's better than Las Vegas in August, right?
Right.
We're going to Las Vegas in February.
Just for the weather alone, it's worth it.
That's exactly right. Well, there's another thing I'd like to say too, that Shawn and his partners Sarah and Jess have written some amazing books, and they've got a lot of amazing teachings on their website. So give us a way to get in touch with you, Shawn, or with your group, so that we can email or call or connect to your.
So our website is theintelligenthypnotist.com. And our email address is theintelligenthypnotist@gmail.com.
Yeah, and our website is it's currently under reconstruction, so email is going to be the best way to get in touch with us.
So give me that email address one more time.
theintelligenthypnotist@gmail.com.
Great.
All right.
What are we saying you're not, right? I mean, it's just like, if you're interested in learning more, that's our type of person.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and now what we always do, and it's going to be especially fun, I am going to open up the microphones of everybody so that we can all say goodnight to you at one time. And so the microphones are open. Thanks so much for being with us, Shawn. We really appreciate it. And Jess as well for your assistance. And of course, the lovely Karen Hand. Thank you for your help and support with this. And everybody that was here. And we'll look forward to seeing you next month with Freddie Jacqueline.
Thank you, Shawn, very much. And Jess, thanks
Shawn.
for participating.
you.
Thanks very much, Shawn. Thank you, Jess. See you in a month.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.